Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And today, before I start, I'd like to report that one of the most popular content providers on YouTube and other content providing sites who tends to, or I don't want to say who tends to, who is incredibly pro-Ukrainian, and obviously that is his right to be pro-Ukrainian. You can say whatever you want. It was a fairly free speech platform at one point. Now that's highly regulated. But again, this individual, being a fighting age male, who formerly lived in Ukraine, took advantage of freeyourcountry.org, fleeyourcountry.org, escaped Ukraine, escaped conscription, even though he is a fighting age male with advanced piloting skill sets. Nonetheless, he is now vacationing in France, possibly elsewhere in Europe, making tens of thousands of dollars reporting on this conflict. It'll be very interesting to see what happens after the war. Will this certain content provider be accepted back into the fold if in fact he ever does go back to Ukraine? Again, fighting age male, advanced piloting skill sets, fled Ukraine to avoid conscription, and now taking advantage of the conflict by reporting on the conflict. Interesting. So here we sit today as we continue to watch this conflict unfold. As I had reported yesterday, the Robotynya pocket, the Robotynya pocket, however you wish to pronounce it, continues to elongate. The Ukrainian forces have been unable or unsuccessful in its endeavor of widening the Robotynya pocket by expanding from west to east towards Verbove. Again, this was a new objective for the Ukrainians, again, to expand it from west to east rather than elongate the pocket further to the south. But it appears that the Ukrainians are going to continue now in a southward advance towards Ochera Tuvate in this locale here. Now, that's going to require Ukrainian forces to penetrate another 1, 2, 3, 4 Russian defensive lines, and possibly even more. And thus give the Russians the opportunity to attack the east and western flanks of the Robotynya pocket. So is this something that the Russians are allowing the Ukrainians to do? Or is it something that the Russians are trying to prevent? And it's just through the force of arms and tactical operational ability that's given the Ukrainians the ability to expand this pocket. I don't think at this point, at least here at MFAN, we don't think this is going to help the Ukrainians at the end of the day. Does it signal to the West that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is still ongoing? Yes, it does. Did they take a small village? Yes, the Ukrainians did. Have they secured some outer Russian defensive lines? Yes, they have. Now, the question is where does this lead? How do the Ukrainians take this minor tactical victory, or this perceived tactical victory, and expand on it? Now, if they were able to widen the pocket and attack the left and right flanks of the Russian defensive barriers this first Russian line of defense, then we could say, well, this is going to be a slow, progressive operation by the Ukrainians to try and clear out this main Russian defensive line, the first Russian defensive line in this southern sector. But that's not what we're seeing. That's not what we're seeing happening. And it's highly likely that the Ukrainians will continue to be pummeled by Russian heavy artillery, long-range multiple-launch rocket systems, cruise missiles, attack helicopters, ground attack aircraft in the ongoing operation. So again, at this point, the Ukrainians are losing more men than the Russians in this area. And in all probability, the Russians are perfectly accepting this ongoing operation in terms that it puts the Russians in the advantage by being able to attack this dense makeup of Ukrainian forces that are now operating in this area. You have a multitude of brigades, 5 to 8 brigades operating in this Robotynya pocket that are continuing to be attacked by Russian forces. Now, elsewhere, we are seeing the Ukrainian forces attempting to achieve smaller advances. We have seen this take place in Optinya, in this area. This is again south of Avdiivka. We are seeing elements of Ukrainian Yager Brigade and Ukrainian Mechanized Brigade attempt to make minor tactical achievements in this area. There continues to be bloody fighting between Ukrainian units and Russian units that are deployed in this area. Now, is this going to achieve a breakout for the Ukrainian forces? No, it's not. It's simply giving the Ukrainians the ability to say, hey, we may have captured another very small village. If we go over to the Rondelli Foundation map and we look exactly at this area, again, this is what we're talking about. This very small settlement in this area here. This is what the Ukrainians right now are trying to secure. Now, it does, in front of them, put them these retention ponds and small lakes that is going to be difficult for the Ukrainians to continue to advance, especially towards the Donetsk International Airport, which is essentially a dead man zone. Again, even if the Ukrainians make attempts to attack the airport, it is not a functioning airport. It is simply wide expanses of land in which the Russians will be able to use drones and heavy artillery to continue to cause catastrophic casualties against Ukrainian forces. Now, if we continue to see an assault by Ukrainian forces, we see additional forces being brought in, and we start to see fighting taking place on the outskirts or in the suburbs of Donetsk, then we may reevaluate what is happening on the ground. But that's what we're seeing there. Bakhmut, again, not a lot to report on that front. The Ukrainians are not making any headway. And again, the main battle areas continue to be the Zaporizhia front. Again, the battle for the Robotynya pocket continues to be where everyone is watching, where most of the newer Ukrainian maneuver units have been deployed against Russian forces. And then we're seeing the the Ukrainian supplied Leopard 2 from the United Kingdom. The Challenger 2 from the United Kingdom, Leopard 2s from a variety of states originating from Germany, and Bradley armored fighting vehicles, Stryker armored personnel carriers are equipping most of these brigades. But again, the main Ukrainian offensive designed to push down to Verbove has failed. the Ukrainians have lost quite a few armored vehicles along this road leading to Verbove. Lots of armored vehicles have been destroyed by the Russians, and lots of Ukrainian manpower have met their doom in this area in which this unsuccessful offensive operation has occurred. And now we're starting again to see the Ukrainians trying to push further to the south, due south in this pocket, which again is only going to create an environment in which the Russian forces will then be able to launch a counterattack on the western and eastern flanks of this expanding southern pocket. Again, the Ukrainians need to pay very, very careful attention to what is happening. And they have to ask themselves the question, are they falling into a snare in which it will be very, very difficult for those Ukrainian forces to indeed get out of? So that's where we set for today. We are continuing to watch the battle for the robot in the pocket. We continue to watch the engagements that are taking place northwest of Donetsk, including just to the outskirts of the Donetsk International Airport, no longer in use, a kill zone for Russian forces, kill zone for Ukrainian forces, that the Russians are using this terrain as is. So that's where we set for today. More to come very, very soon. Thanks for joining us, and as always, have a good day.